All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday. I'm gonna say good morning to some people, and then I'll hop right in, and we'll pick up where we left off yesterday. Okay. So Reza, good morning, Reza. Reza's here. Awais, good morning to you. Simran, good morning, Simran. Malika, good morning, Malika. Who else is here? Basil is here. Good morning, Basil. And Hamad is here. Good morning, Hamad. And Sean is here. Morning, Sean. All right. So, um, yes, let's jump into where we were yesterday. So, yesterday we were talking about classism, of course, and we were talking about wealth inequality, right? And we said that. Good morning, Nicole. Um, we said that particularly within the United States, but in other countries around the world, there's a pretty significant economic inequality within society, right? So, as you can see here, the the top 20%. Good morning. The top 20% of American society has really most of the wealth, right? It looks like about almost 80% of the wealth, which is pretty shocking, right? And again, some countries are a little less equal or a little more equal. It depends on where you go. Um, the U.S., as we'll see, is one of the most unequal countries around the world, and we'll circle back to that. We watched a little video yesterday on the 5 growing causes of economic inequality, and we said that they were this, right? We said that, first of all, technological change has had a big impact, right? So we now have computers and robots. I'm just going to get a little more comfortable here. We have computers, we have robots, and increasingly we have artificial intelligence, right? And those kind of things can, they can do the simple jobs that we've had humans do for decades, right, or for centuries. And so, as we use more computer technology, more AI, more people are getting kind of pushed out of the good morning, are getting pushed out of the workforce, right? And yesterday we kind of mentioned yesterday we mentioned bank tellers, and I think some people were shocked at the idea that once upon a time you went into a bank to withdraw your money, and having done it, I'm a little shocked that we did it at one point. Because now, of course, you can just go to your app and transfer money all over the place wherever you want. But yeah, and again, but bank tellers have been put out of work by that, right? And we've all gone to the grocery store and used the sort of self checkout thing, and those are cashiers' jobs that are no longer there, right? And factories are full of automated processes and robots and things that do the kind of work that human beings used to do, right? And so, as we continue to use robotic technology and computers and AI, we're kind of, we're making things cheaper and more efficient, but we're also pushing these people out of work, right? And the question, of course, is going to be, where do they ultimately go, right? Like, what kind of jobs are they getting if they're not getting bank teller jobs and cashier jobs, and hopefully not teaching jobs? Hopefully those will continue to be, human filled by humans for the next, at least 40 years or so. Here's hoping. Um, but technology is kind of pushing people out of the workforce, right? And again, we said that due to globalization, a lot of in the US and in Canada too, a lot of those kind of manufacturing jobs are gone, right? So they've either disappeared due to technology or they've moved overseas, right? And so, again, if we looked at all of the things that we own in this room, we would find that probably almost everything is made in China, and if not in China, probably Southeast Asia somewhere, right? And only really a few things are made in the Western world now. And so, again, all the people that used to work in those industries are now, where do they go, right? And we said that they've kind of fallen down the economic ladder, wound up in less secure, less well-paying jobs, right? And so that's increased the inequality within society as well, right? We said that there are bigger companies now than there really have ever been, right? I don't know, companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon and Apple. I don't know that any company has ever been as big as they are. And so again, their top people are making huge amounts of money, and that's again increasing the inequality between people within a society. Right? Yeah, we said that trade unions are kind of not entirely a thing of the past, but they are declining, right? And so people who aren't in a union have less bargaining power, right? They just have themselves. And again, if Rafay comes and asks me for a raise and he's difficult about it, it's much easier for me to just fire him than to give him the raise. Although I can't just fire you for asking for a raise. That's not how it works. But again, if Rafay is representing a union of workers, I kind of have to take him seriously, right? Because they can make things difficult for me, right? They can go on strike and slow down their work and things like that. And so, labor unions can be really helpful in allowing workers to kind of negotiate on a more equal footing with the owner of the company or with the bosses. But again, those are declining, right? And again, people who are who have managed to stay on top, they have advantages and access to resources that others don't have, right? And in the video, they pointed out the idea that, people who are on the top tend to stay there because, of course, they have the money to educate their children better and make sure that they didn't point this out in the video, but make sure their health is better and their food is better and their living conditions are better. And because of that, they tend to have better outcomes. Right? They have the ability to take care of themselves, right? And there's lots of people on the bottom part of society who will struggle to access health care and nutritious food and good education for their kids, right? And so that not only contributes to the inequality, but it also maintains it, right? And so it limits social mobility, which I think is what I'm going to come to now. But before I do, I would like to ask you, out of these 5, so out of this, which one do you think which ones do you think will affect you most? Because again, you're all going to wind up having jobs in the near or maybe slightly far future, but what do you think? Why you say that?
I feel like in the next 10 years, like AI is going to take over almost everything.
Yeah.
That's going to affect a lot of jobs.
So you think the technological one and sort of massive use of AI will?
Yeah, because like at the rate at which like Tesla and Jeff Bezos' company are like moving ahead,
Yeah.
it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It's taking us as well, but then they are impressive.
They're what?
They're impressive, like the way they're moving.
Yeah.
Spending as well, honestly, like a lot of people got jobs and everything.
Well, it's and that's the thing, right? Is that the pace of technological change continues to increase, right? And again, like there was I don't know if I said this in this class or history, maybe history, but there was an Instagram post, and the oldest person in the world today, whoever they are, they're 111 or something, oldest person, good morning, in the world today has witnessed or has been alive for the first flight of an airplane, so 1911 by Orville and Wilbur Wright, the first successful flight of an airplane in 1911, and they've been alive for the first helicopter flight on Mars, right? And so again, if you go back in history, you'll see that technology doesn't really advance that quickly, right? There's been generations and generations of people before for whom technology really didn't change in their lifetime, right? Or maybe, we found a new way to do this one little thing, woo, right? But as we've kind of come up to the modern day, technological change is accelerating, and that's a huge, that's in the lifetime of one person. We figured out how to fly, and now we have unmanned vehicles flying on the planet Mars, right? That's an insane amount of technological change just in one lifetime. And I think, you know, given that state of change, it's impossible to, you know, to imagine what's going, like, what technology will be like when you're all 80, right? Like, that's 60 years away. Well, anything could happen, right? Because again, technology is so rapidly advancing, and again, it's going to affect people's lives and people's work as well, right? Not only what they do, but you know what they're not really able to do because we've farmed it out to AI or to computers, right?
What do you mean about surgery?
What about?
Surgery? It's
Sur-
like there's been so many incidents for robots.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I don't know enough about. I don't know.
Testing it out on rats and monsters and stuff.
Well, yeah, medicine is interesting, right? Because medicine's another field in which, you know, the knowledge changes at a pretty quick rate, right? And I would, you know, I would suggest that most, unless people are specialists, right? Like, you know, unless they specialize in one thing, uh, most doctors' knowledge is probably out of date because there's so much research being done that they just don't have time to read it all, right? And so, yeah, most of them, if they're out of med school, I would assume they're probably a little bit out of date because they just can't keep up with the amount of information. But, you know, an artificial intelligence or a computer could, right? Those things can read all day long, right? And read multiple things at the same time. And so, you know, maybe there's a way to augment the medical profession either surgically, right, with surgical robots, or with some sort of artificial intelligence thing that the doctor can use as kind of a extension of their own brain kind of thing. I don't know. Who knows, right? Like it's funny, like when you look, people are really bad at predicting the future, right? And every time we try to do it, every time we make a movie where, you know, things happen in the future, it's not at all. Have you guys seen Back to the Future? Yeah, so when they go ahead to 20, is it 2015 they go ahead to? Yeah, they start off in, good morning, they start off in 1985, they go ahead to 2015, and of course, you know, everyone's on hoverboards and there's all kinds of weird stuff going on, and it's like 2015 is not like that, you know, and 2021 is not even like that. I want my hoverboard, damn it, and it has still not arrived. But but yeah, we're really bad at predicting the future, right? And I would say that, you know, with the pace of technological change, I think we're going to be really bad at it because it's hard to keep up with how fast things go. What else? Anything else that you think will affect your morning? What's that? Globalization? Yeah. Some of those global superstars are kind of pushing smaller places out of business, right? And again, that's probably not good for it's not good for people either, right? In terms of having choice or, you know, a competitive market that keeps prices low. It's not good if you have just a bunch of big companies, right? And it's not very interesting, right? It's much more interesting to go to a small store than to go to a Walmart, right? Walmart is not interesting right, in any way. But yeah, that's true. That's true. What else? Anything else? Can you turn off that little notification there? Thank you. I don't know. Sorry, say that again.
Like if the rich people continue like to get into the computer and computer, even a person like a master's degree,
Yeah.
maybe in the future we might have like difficulty in like finding a good job.
Yeah. Well, that's happened as well, right? Is that people, as post-secondary education has become more available and more necessary, people need higher levels of education just to do very simple things, right? I mean, most admin jobs seem to need a bachelor's degree, and years ago you didn't need that, but now kind of do, right? You definitely can't do anything without a high school diploma, right? And so, yeah, there's a real kind of arms race in terms of degrees and things like that, right? The other thing that might be worth saying too is, this idea of failing labor, right? And so lots of people working contract work or, the gig economy, which we talked about yesterday, those are tough too because, again, people are just picking up contracts and working for a few months here and there, and then the work is over, right? And so you're kind of constantly looking for work, but at the same time, your financial situation is never really that stable, so you're never really sure, should you buy a house now? Who knows? Because you have a job for the next 3 months and then you don't know, right? Plus you have no benefits, you have no pension plan or anything like that, and so that kind of, puts a bunch of people in a very kind of financially uncertain spot, right? And that's not going to lead to more equality either, right? That's going to lead to people, struggling to get by. Well, that's not a very pretty picture, is it? um, but that's an interesting problem, though, isn't it? Because, again, the more you continue to, integrate technology into the workforce, the more you kind of replace people with machines or with algorithms or whatever you do. The more you do that, the more people are kind of out of work, right? And again, we're not talking about like on a weekly or monthly basis, but over the years, where are those people going to go, right? How are you going to find employment for them, right? Politicians like to do this during elections, right? They promise jobs, right? We're going to create 1 million new jobs. Fantastic, but where, right? And where are they going to come from if you're constantly replacing people with machines and computer programs? Where are those people going to find work, right? What do you think? Where are those people going to find work? Where are we going to put them to work? What's that? Well, it's certainly possible that they might, right? It's certainly possible that those people might fall into poverty, become homeless, because again, not only, some people are just not employable, right? They have mental or developmental health issues, they have drug addictions, they have no education. Some people are not employable, right? But lots of people are, and we don't just want to push those people out onto the street, do we? Like, that's not really good for society either. And I'm pretty sure that you don't want to be one of those people, and I know that I don't. So this is kind of an issue, right? Because, again, we're removing jobs from one side of the equation, but we're not really adding any on the other. So, plus our population is going up, right? So what are we gonna do? Let me offer you something in a second here. Actually, no. I'm going to jump right ahead because we've talked about this. Right. So the idea here is that, the more people that get pushed out of work by technology, the more people are going to fall below the poverty line, right? They won't be able to pay for their basic food and clothing and shelter. And so question again is, what are we going to do about that, right? We can't just create new jobs from nowhere. We can't just pay people to stand on a street corner and dance all day, right? You can't do that. What are we going to do? Well, I'm going to offer this to you here, and it's a little TED Talk by this guy Rutger Bregman. And Rutger has an idea about how we might solve this problem. And his problem is, or his problem, the question he's answering is not simply about worker replacement, due to technology. It's kind of about, sorry, I'm just getting this set up. It's also about how to assist people who are living in poverty already, okay? So, I'm just going to put this in here. Put this in here. Okay, so, good, all that's in Microsoft Teams. So, his TED Talk is titled this. It's titled, "Poverty isn't a lack of character, it's a lack of cash." Right? And so, again, here in his title, he's speaking to kind of a stereotype that, people are poor because they're bad, right? They're drug addicts, they're alcoholics, they're lazy, they're, not interested in doing any work, they just want to slack all day and hang around, right? There's lots of negative stereotypes around people who are poor or homeless, right? And again, there's a grain of truth to that. Some people are lazy, right? And some people don't want to do any work. But again, it's a stereotype and it doesn't really describe what the picture is. And so he's saying here, it's not a lack of character, it's a lack of cash. And so he's going to talk about some of the causes of poverty, at least from his perspective, how lack of money affects people's ability to make decisions, which is very interesting. He's going to suggest a solution, and of course I'll want to know what you think of that solution, okay? So we'll hop into this video. Any questions before we do? No? Okay. So, online people, of course, the link is in Microsoft Teams, and we'll see you just after the video, okay? So, what do you think? What's going on here? What does he say is the cause of poverty?
Lack of a basic income.
Well, the lack of a basic income, but back it up a little bit.
Scarcity mentality.
What's that?
Scarcity mentality.
That scarcity mentality, right? And so what is that? What is scarcity mentality? Yeah. So when people, and this is not just poverty people, this is any people, are in a situation where they don't have enough of something they need, their brains start working differently, right? And he says you don't start looking at long term, you don't start making long term decisions, you start making decisions that are going to, get you what you need right now, right? And again, those might be good decisions, but they also might be bad ones, right? And he says that at the beginning, is that the poor smoke more, they drink more, their health is poor, they don't eat as well. And again, some of those are tied to the idea that they don't have much money, but yeah, but if, poor people are smoking a lot, I mean, smoking's expensive, right? And so he's saying that, yeah, indeed, that people within a context where they don't have enough of what they need are going to, are going to make bad choices. And so a universal basic income is the solution to that, right? I feel like everyone's a little tired. Everyone's head's kind of down. Do you want to take a break before we come back and talk about this? Okay, let's take a little break and then we'll come back, okay? Okay, and we're back. So, Rutger Bregman here has outlined one of the things he thinks is responsible for poverty. I don't think it's the only thing. I think that would be ridiculous. Poverty has a lot of different factors involved in it, but he does say that, you know, giving people the opportunity to fix their situation and get out of poverty, you know, might have to do with a universal basic income or a basic income guarantee, however you want to say it, right? And how does he say that that would work, this basic income guarantee?
Like people will be able to pay for their shelter, and they'll be able to get education. So if they get education, it's like they're gonna get enough to get themselves.
Well, kind of, right? Like, he's talking about education in, he talks about it in the context of that experiment in Manitoba, right? Where the government actually provided a universal basic income or a guaranteed, or a basic income guarantee for a few years, right? And again, they see that people's outcomes actually increase, right? Their educational outcomes are better, their visits to the hospital are lower, their domestic violence incidences are lower, and probably a few other things. And so adding that into people's income has a beneficial effect, right? And so he's saying it's kind of working like a negative income tax, right? So is the government just handing out money to you? No, right? So it has to do where you will actually not be allowed to make less than the poverty line, right? So if you're if the poverty line is about $20,000 a year, then that means that you won't be allowed to make less than that, right? So will I get any money if I make more than 20,000 a year? No, I will not, right? So it'll be a tax thing, but I'll never see any of that money, right? But if for some reason I do fall below the poverty line, if I do fall below 20,000 a year, the government will top me back up, right? And make sure that I'm at least at that line, right? And so he said in the talk that this is kind of one of the fears around this idea, right? Is that if you guarantee everyone a basic income, well, then everyone will just quit their jobs and stay at home and collect money, right? But do you think that's a reasonable fear? You think so? Why?
Because people might, like a lot of people might actually do that, and that would be
Some people might do that. It's true, right? I'll speak for myself, but I think I probably speak for a lot of people too. I would not do that, right? Because I don't want to live at the poverty line, right? And because $20,000 is just not a lot of money a year to live on, right? And so, yeah, am I going to quit my job if this program is available? Hell no, right? I don't want to live at the poverty line. I want to live where I am, or higher if possible, but probably not. So, yeah, some people might, but most people won't, right? Because most people don't live at the poverty line, and most people don't want to either, right? And so if they don't have to, they're not going to quit their jobs, right? I'm not going to quit my job. Nobody who works in this building is going to quit their job, right? And so I think you're right, Victoria. There are some who will be like, all right, I can just sit on the couch, right? And maybe they will, but a lot of people also will not, right? And again, one of the things we talked about, in the last unit, we talked about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and these are the rights and freedoms that Canadians enjoy. Is it a right not to live in poverty? Is the question. Now, it's not in the Charter, but that's a personal question for you. Do you think it is a human right to at least be able to have basic food and shelter and clothing. Because if you don't think that, then fine, right? Like, then this universal basic income guarantee is, you know, not for you. But if you do think it is, then, you know, do we have a duty as a society to provide that, right? As a society, we try to make sure that everybody has the rights and freedoms that the Charter promises them. But if we think it's a right to have basic food and shelter and clothing, then maybe this is something we need to do. Right? I also bring it up because of the other problem that I introduced earlier, which is workers being pushed out of the workforce because of technology, right? Eventually we're going to have fewer jobs than there are people. And it won't be that, you know, it won't be that people are lazy or uneducated. It's just that there won't be enough jobs to go around, right? Because we've given them all to computers and robots and artificial intelligence, right? So what happens if we wind up with, you know, the unemployment rate in Canada right now is about 6%, I think, maybe 6% or so, which is pretty normal. We kind of oscillate between about 5 and 9, maybe. If it starts to go above 9, people start to freak out, right? But I mean, imagine we get to a point where it's 20%, right? 20% of people in the country are unemployed, but it's not because they're not employable, it's just because we just do not have jobs for them. We do not have anything that we can pay them for. So again, what do, right? Do they just become homeless people wandering the streets with shopping carts? Or do we have to look at a different way of thinking about work and payment, right? Is there a responsibility? Those of us who do have a job and are working, do we have a responsibility to take care of those people who don't, right? And again, sure, maybe some of them are lazy and don't want to do any work, but eventually that won't be the case, right? Eventually there may be people who just don't have a job, right? And it's through no fault of their own, really. But what do you think? Do you think this is a reasonable solution? Do you think it'll work? Do you think there's something better? It's a good idea? Do you think we have some sort of like moral obligation to do this? Or what do you think?
Instead of giving all the taxes, like income tax, that talking about the US, all their income tax, it basically goes to the military. Instead of like giving it to the military completely,
Yeah.
you give most of them to the homeless people.
Yeah.
So like that creates a good society.
Yeah. What do you think? So the poverty line, however you measure it, is people who cannot afford basic food and shelter and clothing for themselves. How many people in Canada do you think fall below that line, like percent-wise? 6? I think it's closer to, I think it's closer to 8 or 9. I think. What do you think that number is for the United States? Like, how much more? 10%? Last I looked, it was almost 15%. Yeah. Yeah, you see, Andre? So, yeah, the last I looked, it was about 14 point something percent, 14.9. So, yeah, go ahead.
Like the biggest reason that poverty is currently like not is drugs. I feel like it's drugs.
Trust?
Drug.
Oh, drugs.
Yeah, I feel like it's drugs.
Well, in what way? Are drugs are they the...
They're like an escape from reality.
Sure.
So they just use it to feel like the best life, and to end up on the street. And like they whatever kind of money they get, instead of like spending it wisely, they just buy it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if people are, yeah, people who become, addicted to really hard stuff, yeah, their life kind of gets out of their control, right? The their addiction takes over, and that's certainly true for, a number of people. Um, what do you think about that? Do you think why do people? I don't know, Victoria. I feel like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I don't think it's the drugs problem. I think because for a person to get addicted to drugs to the point they become homeless and feel like there's plenty of other factors in place. Like it's not just the drug, it's the person itself.
Yeah.
They have probably like mental issues or like a difficult background.
Yeah, and the drug issue is kind of a complicated one, and unfortunately, governments and teachers have kind of made it too simple. Like they've made it like, oh, people who take drugs are bad, and people are just looking for a good time, and then it gets out of their control, and then your whole life is destroyed, and sometimes that's the case, right? Sometimes that's true that people, you know, think they're getting in it for a good time, and then turns out it's not very fun. But I think you're right, Victoria, is that a lot of people who start taking drugs take it for a reason, right? They're trying to overcome some sort of emotional or physical pain that they're dealing with, right? And then it gets out of their control. But a lot of times the drug is not, the drug is not really the problem. It's they're dealing with some sort of emotional trauma that they can't manage, right? And so the drug helps them to, just feel halfway normal, right? But again, lots of these things are, super addictive. They're all made on the street, so there's no regulation. There's nobody looking after these people. There's no one there to make sure they don't overdose. And so, yeah, there's a lot of problems. And so some people have advocated that actually the government should supply people with drugs, right? That way we can make sure that the drugs are properly made, that there's no weird stuff in them. If you go to get your drugs, then the person will give you, a proper amount so you won't overdose. And so some people have suggested that the government could step in and actually provide a drug supply for people, right? But again, there's there's the fear that, oh, well, everyone will line up for drugs now, right? It's the same thing as, oh, well, everyone will quit their jobs with a basic guarantee. But I ask you, and you don't have to put up your hands, but if we had downstairs, where there's that open space there, if that was a place where you could go down and get free heroin, would you go down and get free heroin? No. Would you? I wouldn't, right? So again, there's this, people feel there's this danger that, oh, everyone will be on drugs. And I don't think that's the case, right? I think the people who are on drugs don't necessarily want to be using them, right? But they need them, or their addiction has gotten out of control, right? Most of us, even if it was freely available to us, we probably wouldn't go down there, right? And so, again, drugs is kind of a complicated social issue as well, just like poverty is. But again, there's this current poverty that we're dealing with, but there's also a potential for us to have a large number of people out of the job, right? Out of the workforce in the next 10 or 20 or 30 years. And so, again, what do you do to those people, right? What do you do to them? What do you do with them, right? What is our responsibility to them? Because Margaret Thatcher, who was Prime Minister of the UK, she thinks it's their fault, right? She says it's a personality defect, right? And again, maybe for some, but in 20 or 30 years, when we have a bunch of people out of work, will it still be a character defect, a personality defect? Or is it a result of the way society works and the way that technology operates, right? And if so, what is the responsibility of those of us who are able to work? Should we say, well, screw you guys, I guess you're out of luck? Or is it our responsibility to take care of these people, right? Same thing with drug addicts, right? if drug addicts are trying to medicate some sort of, incredibly painful emotional trauma, is it our job to kind of take care of them? Or is it our job to say, well, you guys are a bunch of bad people, so we're going to just throw you in jail, which is basically what we do, right? What do you think? Any other thoughts here? Universal basic income.
Well, maybe it's kind of mostly that's like adult. Because there are different libraries that have been given,
Yeah,
and then you add your drugs as well.
yeah. And that's probably true too, is that if you look at people who are living in poverty, or people who are, sorry, nose is itchy, people who are living in poverty or people who are homeless, yeah, you'll probably see that there's a lot of factors involved, right? It can be, it'll be them, it'll be their upbringing and what happened to them as a child, circumstances as an adult, their education, their, mental illness, if they have any drug or substance abuse that might be happening. Any of those things are all kind of mixed together, right? And so anyone you talk to is going to have probably a slightly different story, right? And so that's what makes it a little more difficult than Rutger suggests here, right? Is that, yes, the problem is once you're in poverty, it's hard to get out, right? Because you need money to kind of help pull yourself up the ladder, but if you can't do it, then you're stuck, right? But people get stuck for different reasons, right? And a guaranteed basic income is not going to solve someone's drug problem, right? But will it help some people? Maybe, right? Maybe if people had money to buy drugs, then they wouldn't steal it from others, right? Either violently or through breaking and entering, right? Maybe our policing costs would be lower and our criminal justice costs would be lower if people had money to buy those things rather than stealing it from others. Maybe, right? Again, I don't know. These are complex problems, right? But I'm not 100% buying what Rutger is selling here, but I think it's probably a good idea. And I think it would be naive to say that it will solve everything, right? But it'll solve some things, right? There's lots of people living in poverty who are good people, right? And through, various circumstances, they are not earning a lot of money, right? And often they're trying to support kids, and kids are more likely to live in poverty as well, right? And so, again, do we have a duty to help those people out, or do we simply say, well, I guess you'll just have to work harder, right? Yeah, I don't know. It is an idea in Canada that keeps coming up, right? It kind of bubbles up and people talk about it, and then it kind of disappears again. But it keeps coming, it keeps appearing. So we'll kind of see. And if you will, during last year, during the sort of lockdown period, Canada we almost had a guaranteed basic income for a while. We had those CERB payments, CERB, and that's exactly what the government did. They sent you money. If you needed, if you were not working because of COVID, they sent you money so you could buy groceries and pay your rent. Right? We had a temporary universal basic income for 6 months, right? And to make sure that people continue to be able to eat and live, right? And so why wouldn't we extend that to people who can never afford to eat or live, right? Why is it okay now but not okay for people who deal with that all the time? Okay, let me see here. Yeah, okay. So that is all I have for you today. You can do some project work for the next 25 minutes if you like. I want to just remind you of a couple things for your presentation. So we'll be doing those next week, right, from Tuesday to Friday. And so what I'm going to do is Monday morning at 8, we're going to start, right? And I'm going to pull a name out of a hat. And if it's your name, you got to be ready to go, okay? So you've got to have your stuff ready, okay? The best thing to do, good morning, Bijan. The best thing to do would be to get me your PowerPoint presentation, and then I can easily put it up on the screen for you. And then when you're ready to go, you can just come up here and you can talk, and I can change for you. You can just tell me when to change slides, and I'll do it, no problem. But as I say, I'm just going to draw names and we're going to go. And you got to be ready, because if everyone comes in and says, oh, you know, I'm not quite ready yet, then we're never going to get through them all, right? Because everyone will come in and say, oh, I need another day or whatever, and then it'll never happen. So you got to be ready. If you're not ready, I'm not marking it, okay? So Monday morning, you got to be ready to go, okay? Remember in your PowerPoint presentation that I would like you to structure some sort of argument, right? And again, your argument can be as simple as, you know, this social justice issue is a significant one, right? This is something we should pay attention to for this reason, right? It can be very simple. It doesn't have to be, you know, some, you know, epiphany from the heavens, right? It doesn't have to be like that. It can be very simple, right? Just structure it where you're making a point and you're supporting it with your research, right? Also, don't forget, at the end of your presentation, you need to have your sources listed, okay? So maybe in the last slide or 2 slides or 3 slides, whatever you need to fit them in, I'd like them listed there, okay? Yeah. The other thing is you may want to mentally rehearse with yourself, speak slowly, okay? When you get up here, you're going to be nervous and it's going to feel like everything's happening really fast, and so you're going to go blah 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 blah. You're going to go real fast, right? So you cannot speak slowly enough, okay? Think about the speed I'm speaking right now. I'm not speaking quickly. I'm taking lots of pauses. It's no big deal. Try to purposely speak slowly, right? You'll probably speak faster than that anyway, but if you try to speak slowly, it'll at least like put the brakes on you, right? If you don't think about it, you're just going to come up here and blah 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 blah, and you're going to fly through it, okay? So just relax. Everything's fine. Nice and slow. Take a pause where you need to. Okay, that will help. Okay. Anything else I wanted to say? Nope. Okay, so you're gonna have to be ready. You have to be ready Monday morning, because it could be you. And actually, I don't know. Hopefully, it will be you, because I like going first personally, because then I don't have to follow anyone else, just in case they're really good and mine's not. That stinks. But also then you can kind of relax a little bit, right? So hopefully it will be you, but I shall simply pull a name. Let's see. And the other thing I'll mention too is that because we're going to be doing a combination of in-class people and online people, we won't be using YouTube. So I'll use Zoom for that. So it'll just be, you know, we'll just be able to see it. And so online people and in-class people, you're not broadcasting to the entire universe. It'll just be us, okay? So everybody can relax. You're not, yeah. I wouldn't put you on YouTube like that. Okay, so that's all I'll say for right now. I'll let you I'll let you work. If you have any questions, you can ask me. And other than that, we'll come back tomorrow and we'll I have just a couple more things to show you. Okay? All right.